So it was one of those days. It was one of those days when the whole world was frozen over. Late winter, early spring, and this particular year, it was about a 4-day event. I was a hospital chaplain at the time in Carrollton, Texas, living in Southwest Fort Worth. Yes, I was nuts, but I was trying to finish up my dissertation, so I needed access to the library and knew this was probably not a long-term job. But what happened was I just stayed home and did extra work and marveled. And then on the 5th day, when it was clear enough, I went to the hospital where I heard all sorts of stories like all the nurses calling in, we can't get there, the ground's frozen. Well, that was understandable. But the nursing director, my boss, she got the hospital van and she put snow tires on, or snow chains on it. And she was able to take nurses back and forth and keep them from being totally worn out to the point of endangering, patients. So that was pretty awesome. But when I got there, I also saw Donna. Donna was our social worker, and she grabbed me and she said, "Oh gosh, I'm so glad you're here. Would you please come help me?" And then I heard the story of Daryl. Daryl was a homeless person. And Daryl, well, they tried to get Daryl to go into a shelter before the storm hit. They knew it was coming, and Daryl said no. And they tried to go and force Daryl in, and he took off running, and they couldn't catch him. But by the time the storm came, they went back looking, and they found Daryl under the highway bridge, just about dead. And so day one, Daryl in ICU trying to save his life. They did. The next couple of days, they got him out of that condition where it was kind of give and take, didn't know what happened. A 4th day came, and he was doing much better. And a 5th day came, and he was eligible for discharge. But Donna knew discharge meant he would just go back under the bridge. It was still dropping below zero at night, and he was so frail now that he would not survive. So she refused to let the hospital discharge him. And instead, she worked on a plan, and now she brought me in on it, saying, "I need you to go with me so there's a man as I take Daryl around and do some things to help him out." And she said, "Don't be offended that he won't talk to you. It has nothing to do with you being a chaplain. He just doesn't talk." She said, all week long, all he would say is, "Nope." And yep. I asked him about his family. "Tell me about your family." "Nope." "Tell me about the places you stayed that have helped you." "Nope." I mean, it was just nope most of the week. And so we got in the van. She drove. I sat on the bench. There's just one side door in the van. And I sat between him and the door because we thought he might at some stop just jump out. And then what were we going to do? And the first stop was Goodwill. Donna had to have all of his clothes thrown into the incinerator and had completely given him a new wardrobe. I don't know how she did that, probably at Goodwill, but now we had to go back because he needed a heavy coat. And if he didn't, we knew he'd be out on the street more than likely, percentage-wise. That would be the prediction. So we got to get you a coat. Nope. No, come in here. Look at all these coats. We looked at a Goodwill store that was half heavy coats. It was that time of year, and he could have had anything. They were new, they were old, they were magnificent, they were floor length, they were short, they were fur collar. I mean, anything you want. We kept showing him, "What about this one? What about this one?" Nope. 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 Finally, Donna just kind of like in exasperation was, I give up. And she walked over, and I walked over with her. She was like, "This is how it's been all week. I just can't wait to get rid of this man. He's just driving me nuts." Finally, Daryl came out, and he said, "I found something." And he held up a hoodie, a sweatshirt hoodie, a hoodie that the string was no longer there in the hood, a hoodie that was a zipper hoodie, but it only had the zipper on one side. And Donna was like, no, you've got to get something that zips up. It's heavier than that. Nope. Oh, she said, "Fine." And so we got him a worthless hoodie. And then she said, "I don't know what will happen, but let's get him some food." And so we drove through, the only place she could think of, because when she said, "What kind of food would you like to get for lunch?" he just said, "Nope. So she went through Whataburger, and she got 2 sacks of hamburgers. And he had no luggage, no belongings, so he had 2 arms. He could carry those 2 sacks. And then we got back going, and we went to the bus station. Now, this was a bus station, not for a local bus, because there was no city bus in this town. This was a bus like Trailways or Greyhound. I don't remember what it was. And she said to him, "There is a place that will take care of you. Get off on the 3rd stop." That's all you have to remember. Get off on the 3rd stop. Can you remember that? Yep. Can you repeat it back to me? Nope. We put him on the bus, waved goodbye. The bus took off. She looked at me and she said, I am so glad to be done with that man. I have given him everything and he's just not cooperated at all. And I'm going to go for a long lunch. And I said, well, drop me back off at the hospital because I have a lot of work to do since I've been gone for 4 days and now you've made me spend the morning with you. So we got back to the hospital. She dropped off the van. She got in her car, took off. I got back into the hospital, went to my office, and did the first thing on my list. I made a phone call. Person didn't pick up. Answering machine picked up. The answering machine said something like, this is Donna, social worker for Trinity Medical Center. Please leave your message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Beep. And I said, this is Daryl. And I fell asleep on the bus and I missed my stop. And I don't know where I am, but I'm hitchhiking back. And when I get there, you're going to have to help me again. And you know that sweatshirt you got me? It ain't no good. See you soon. And I hung up. Now, I thought it was a nice joke. I thought she'd get a good laugh out of it. And I just went on. And about an hour and a half later, my phone rings. And it was Donna. And she said, come up to my office right away. And I thought, well, she's milking this. We'll have a good time with this. I'll play along. She'll play along. You know, we'll have a good laugh. I get up to her office, 1 floor above me, her office right outside of ICU, where Daryl had spent all those days. And not only was Donna, the social worker, in there, but the ICU director was in there. And I walked in and they said, Daryl's coming back. And I just busted out laughing. I thought, I can't hold it anymore. You all are so funny. And they said, no, we're not being funny. He's coming back. And I started laughing. Carl, this is not funny. What are we going to do when he gets here? And I said, y'all, Daryl's not coming back. It was me. Oh, you're not funny. This is real. What are we going to do? They just didn't get it. And I listened to them plan and plot over and over. And you know, sometimes when you have a joke, it's even funnier when somebody doesn't get it. And they just didn't get it. It just kept going on and on and on. And so finally, Donna said, I'm leaving. Somebody else will have to deal with him. And she started packing up her purse and everything. And then the ICU director said, I think we should call Dewey. He was our CEO. And I was like, what can Dewey do? You know, call a security guard or bar the guy? I don't know. And finally said, listen, y'all, please listen to me. And they stopped and they looked at me and I said, this is Daryl. And that's when they got it. You know, sometimes when people don't get it, it's funny. Sometimes it's tragic. Sometimes it's in between. After the service, you can come up and tell me what I'm going to talk about, what it is. But there is a whole chapter in the New Testament. It's Luke chapter 9. If you will go there with me, then you will see that there's probably in your Bible a heading and some subtitles, that sort of thing. If there was such a thing as the KFV, the Carl Fickling version of the Bible, you know, with footnotes and stuff, there never will be. But if there was, then I would entitle this chapter, They Just Didn't Get It. It starts with a little short passage about how Jesus released the disciples as apostles to go out. They trusted the Lord to take care of them. They saw miracles. They preached the gospel, some awesome times. And then suddenly, we were at verse 7. Look with me at Luke chapter 9, verse 7. And it says, now Herod the Tetrarch, he had heard about all that was going on, that is all about Jesus, and he was perplexed. Because some were saying that John had been raised from the dead, others that Elijah had appeared, and still others that one of the prophets of long ago had come back to life. But Herod said, I beheaded John. Who then is this that I hear such things about? And he tried to see him. He tried to see Jesus. Well, this is an interesting passage because there is a king of the Holy Land, of Israel, of Jerusalem area and beyond. This king, Herod, is somebody that we'll see again, but here in this particular place, he has not, out of his own power, become king. And he's kind of like a sub-king because really the Roman emperor has appointed him, probably because Herod had the best bribe of all those who wanted this position. But Herod was not a person who was Roman. He was a Jew. Maybe I should say a Jew. You know, the people of Israel would not have accepted, the Jewish people would not have accepted somebody as their king who was not a Jew. And like a lot of people that were Jewish or Christian or Muslim politicians, he probably really didn't have the faith, but maybe he was struggling with it. Because in Mark, we'll see that Herod, well, he's like everybody else. He's heard about John the Baptist, prepare you the way of the Lord. But then he hears more about what John is preaching. And John is preaching, King Herod is the major sinner. Because King Herod has married his brother's wife. So you know the Old Testament law that says if a lady's husband dies and they have not had children, then that deceased husband's brother can technically marry the wife to provide children for that woman as if they were from his brother. That's not what this is. That's kind of weird in my opinion, but that's not what this is. This is like, it was easy to get a divorce. And Herodias had divorced Philip, and now Herod had married his brother's wife. And John is saying that is sin. Herod is a big sinner, and Herod was not happy about this, but he didn't do anything about it. Because Mark tells us, well, he's kind of scared of the people, but he was wanting to hear more. Maybe he was under conviction, I don't know, but he was wanting to hear more. But his wife, Herodias, she was mad. She did not like being called a sinner. She did not like this being pointed out, but there was nothing she could do about it because King Herod protected John the Baptist. Until one day. One day, I guess King Herod had like a stag party. All the men, all the guys were there, all the biggies were there. And Herodias' daughter, young lady, came out and she danced. Now, I don't know if that was the dance of 1,000 veils or that was a belly dance, but some kind of hoochie-coochie thing that got Herod all hot and bothered. And he was like, oh, man, you can confess with me if you want. We understand where he might have been coming from. But he was just like, oh, my gosh, this is so amazing. And he made this promise in front of all these witnesses. You are so wonderful, young lady, that I will give you anything you ask, up to half of my kingdom. What a stupid thing to say. Men can be like that, though, can't we? Didn't get one amen from a wife or a man. You should have heard him in the first service. And so, if I had been a friend of Herodias' daughter, I would have been going, take the half, take the half. And maybe that would have got her head cut off eventually, I don't know. But she went to her mother Herodias and said, what should I do? And Herodias, she had her way. She said, this is my time. This gives me what I want. You go back to your stepdad and you say, I want the head of John the Baptist on a platter right now. And he couldn't back down. So she got the head of John the Baptist on a platter right then. And so, who is this Jesus? Well, some people are saying it's John the Baptist come back from the dead, and Herod has already been thinking about this possibility. Herod is just like maybe some superstitious people in your families might be like that. There's really ghosts, and this guy could be coming back from the dead to get me, and he's pretty fearful for that, and he really contemplates it. But that's not the only option when he was wondering to know who is this Jesus. That's the first option. Because the people also said around him, well, it could be Elijah. Now, you know who Elijah is. You go back to the Old Testament, and at least in the historical books, he is the biggest prophet. He is the great prophet of the historical books of the Bible. We could argue in the prophetic books for others, but maybe the most important prophet of the whole Old Testament. And he was doing miracles, and he was preaching the Word of God, and he was aware that his time was almost up, so he got to mentoring somebody, Elisha. And they started working together, and there's some incredible things that happen. You read all about that in 1 Kings, but when you get to 2 Kings, it's like, I don't know, maybe this is where Tolkien got the idea of Frodo saying to his friends, it's time for me to go. He didn't die, he just got on the boat, right? And they sailed off into who knows where. And Elisha, the upstart, he's like, I want a double portion of what you have. Give me that. And Elijah says, well, I don't have that to give, but I'll tell you what, when I depart, if you see me depart, you'll get it. And so in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 11, it says, and it came to pass, as they went on, and as they talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Elijah never died. never went through that human experience that everybody we have ever known has either been through or is going to go through unless Jesus comes back. Elijah just disappeared, and I don't know what that chariot of fire and horses of fire and the whirlwind were like. That's language just to describe what is indescribable to us, but Elijah didn't die. And so in the Jewish custom, in their traditions, they knew that Elijah, he could come back. You know, about half the population of Jewish believers, not Christians, but I mean Old Testament Jewish believers, they thought there was a resurrection. And the other half, they didn't think there was a resurrection. But they could join together to say, but Elijah could come back, whether there's a resurrection or not, because he never died. And so King Herod, that's another option. Maybe this fellow is Herod, maybe this fellow is John the Baptist, or maybe he's Elijah. But there's actually a third option. And so when you look back down there, they say, or it could be a prophet of old come back. Now, this could be another resurrection, or it could just be, and this is what most scholars think, that it is the Messiah. It is that prophet who would come back and save us, but maybe not in the way we understand salvation today as Christians. For instance, a lot of the scholars turn us back to Deuteronomy 18:15, and this is Moses talking. And he says, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from amongst your own brothers, and you must listen to him. And you can read all the passages around that. And we'd say, yeah, they're talking about Jesus. But in this day and time, they're probably talking about a Messiah who would come back to be a military Messiah, drive out the Romans, who would be a political anointed one, who would take over and run the place as a dictator with marvelous things happening that you wouldn't have to be afraid about. And if that's the kind of Messiah that comes back, well, Herod would be disturbed by that. We'll see that follow out at the end of the Gospels. But Herod had three options. He had three choices. Who is Jesus? John the Baptist? Elijah? One of the prophets. And we would know he's wrong, right? In all three cases, what the people are saying, now what Herod is, he's wrong. I heard something not too long ago. I thought it was pretty brilliant. It was a young pastor. Conversation was about the Olympics. Do you remember the last Olympics? If you didn't see this, you probably read about it. It was the opening ceremony, and there was a display of the Last Supper with people in drag. And later they would come on and say, yeah, that's really not what that was. It was other art that we, But this young pastor said, hey, folks, why are we baffled and disturbed when the world acts like the world? They're the world. And so in a sense, what we're looking at right now is Herod looking for some answers about who Jesus is, and he's getting some options from a bad population. But surely the church wouldn't be like that. Surely Christian people wouldn't be like that. Surely we wouldn't all, just turn to the internet and say, oh, it's on the internet, it must be true. And so we skip down, and we find that in verse 18, Jesus is now the one asking the question. And it's the same question, and it's the same answer. So this must have been a pretty important topic, because in 18 it says, once when Jesus was praying in private, and his disciples were with him, he asked them, who do the crowd say I am? And look what they say. They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others that one of the prophets of long ago has come back to life. Do I hear an echo in here? Are we experiencing deja vu? I mean, if this was a TV show, could we have had a split screen and seen Herod and his people and then Jesus and the disciples all having the same question, having the same exact response? Did the disciples get it? Herod didn't get it. In verse 7 it says, and he was perplexed. The KFV would say, he didn't get it. But now, Jesus gives the opportunity to say to the disciples, okay, that's what others are saying, but look what he says in the next verse. Verse 20, but what about you? Who do you say I am? And you can almost guess who will speak up. Oh, you've heard the sermons about bold, brash, fast to speak, fast on his feet, fast to flash. Peter, he speaks up. And he speaks up boldly. And he says the words that we long for. He says, you are the Christ of God. You are the anointed one. You are the Messiah. But I will tell you, as he says the right words, he doesn't have a clue about their meaning. He still doesn't get it. And I will prove that to you. I mean, he still thinks Jesus is coming to be this great man, this prophet, this holy man, this guru. Maybe, hopefully, to be that warrior. We're not done with that thought yet. But he says the right words, the anointed one, the Christ, the Messiah. And Jesus kind of capitalizes on that, and he'll talk about that. We'll come back to that in next week or the week after that as I continue this They Just Didn't Get It series. But skip with me to verse 28. In verse 28, in the section called the Transfiguration, it says, about 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James. He took them up into a mountain to pray, and as he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. And two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus, and they spoke about his departure, that is, his soon-coming crucifixion, which was about to bring to fulfillment in Jerusalem. Peter and his companion were very sleepy, and when they were fully awake, they saw Jesus' glory and the two men standing with them. And as the men were leaving, I'll stop right there. Make sure you understand the situation. This is Jesus. This is Jesus taking his inner circle. This is Jesus, again, going up into the mountain with that inner circle. And this is one of those times where they all fall asleep. But Jesus needs some help. He is fully God, but he is fully human. And he's feeling what you and I would have felt like, knowing that capital punishment is about to descend upon him. And he needs some encouragement, and God sends to him, well, not John the Baptist, he's missing, right? But he sends to him Elijah, that Elijah who never died, and he sends to him a prophet of old, Moses, who we don't think of as a prophet, but he is. And those men, they minister to him physically, spiritually, emotionally. They prepare him, they help him, they strengthen him, they encourage him. And while that's happening, a transfiguration, a change of appearance takes place. Again, we would never understand it, but apparently it's like a glimpse of Jesus in his glorified personhood. And when the disciples wake up and they see that, remember Peter? Well, he's wide awake now. He's looking at what's happening, and he finally speaks. And this is what he says. In verse 33, Master, it's good for us to be here. Hey, let us put up 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Is he saying you are the Messiah, the anointed one, the Christ? Well, in his mind, he is. But what he's saying is, let's build a tent here. Let's just camp out. Let's just live here forever. We don't even have to leave. It'll just be the 3 of you and the 3 of us. This will just be such an awesome experience. Or let's build a little chapel. You know, this will be a place that we can memorialize this event. And whenever we come back, we can say, remember? But what he's saying is, Jesus, Moses, the giver of the law, Elijah, that great prophet, and you, why, Jesus, you are right up there with them. Because truly, he just didn't get it. This morning, my phone app was on 2 Corinthians 5:21, my Bible app, which says, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us. What Peter didn't yet get was that the Messiah was not political, was not military. The Messiah was a suffering servant, a sacrificial lamb. The anointed one was the one who would come here and live a perfect, sinless life and yet be sentenced to death because sin requires payment. And Jesus said, I love you so much, I'll be that payment. And he would go to that cross and he would die so that all we have to do is say yes to the Lord. It's simple technically, maybe not so simple personally, but all we have to do is say, you are God, and I give my life to you, and I follow you. The crucified, the resurrected Savior. Now, do you remember Donna? Yeah. Well, the story of Donna continues, and the rest of the story is that a couple of years later, I got laid off. I got called down to the executive director's office. He said, Carl, sorry, you're doing wonderful work, but hospital's just not making the profits that are required. I've got to lay some people off, and you're one of them. So that Black Friday, 31 of us and a staff of about 150 were gone in a heartbeat. I walked back to my office, and I wasn't overwhelmed with angst or anything. I had a church that was talking to me about being their pastor, and I had a seminary that was talking to me about teaching. And I had been reluctant to leave that post because it was really working well with writing a dissertation on the weekends. Get out of that program. So I got to my office, and I sat down, and I thought for a moment, and I got on the phone, and I called a number, and nobody answered, but the answering machine clicked in, and it said, Hi, you've reached Donna, the social worker for Trinity Medical Center, and if you leave a message, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And so I said, This is Daryl, and I hear y'all need a new chaplain. So I'm coming there to apply, but I need you to fill out all the paperwork for me. See you soon. I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, Donna was in my door, and I could tell by the look on her face, a great look, that she was saying, I'm sorry. But she was saying, I know you'll be all right. And she was saying, thank you for making it easy to say goodbye. Because she got it. Well, that illustration is not what's important about today. What's important is Jesus to you. Who is he to you? Is he some figment of people's imagination? Is he a great man? Is he somebody you're hoping will come back and whip all those people you don't like? Or is he the anointed one? Do you get it?